everybody. Welcome, welcome. This is Patrick J. Bryan, your host. Welcome to Everyday Change Podcast. Excited to have all of you out here today. Go ahead and please go ahead and like, and subscribe. Let's get the likes up so this podcast can get out to more people and help me reach more subscribers. Right now, I'm at 163. I want to be at 200 by the end of the month, if that's all right. So go ahead and share this link with others. Go ahead and let's get the likes up. Let's get the content up. Looking forward to having my guest today, who is Colin Pinkney. First of all, he's a very good friend of mine, but also he's an incredible community leader. He's the CEO and visionary of the Harvest Center in Charlotte, North Carolina. And one of the key things about Everyday Change Podcast is if you want to change the direction of a thing, change the conversation. And when you change the conversation, you can change how the outcome will be, and you want to change those who join it. And so let me know where you're calling from, if you will. Go ahead and put your city, rep your city. Let me know where you're calling from. Hello, good to see everyone today for giving this channel. Hello, hello. Hope and Milton, hello, hello. Be transformed, the transformational moment. Hello, hello. Erica Bishop, hello, hello. Tanya Chandler, hello, hello. Hope Matters. PLLC, hello, hello. Let's go ahead. Let's see who's in today. Let me know the city that you are in. Let's get started. I'm quite excited about today's conversation. In a day and age where there's a lot of polarity, in a day and age where there's so much that we're experiencing right now in our world, it's important to have healthy conversations that will help us move forward. And so it's so good to have a conversation that's going to really help us move forward with that. And so looking forward to the dialogue. Let's go ahead and get the likes up, get the shares up, get the subscribing up so that we can engage each other. You know, Colin's an incredible leader, has incredible experience in the area of community development, reaching people, developing others, coaching others. And he'll talk a little bit more about what the Harvest Center is about, but more importantly, what we can do and how we can grow and engage from conversations that help us be who we need to be. And so excited about having him on. So looking forward to it. And again, this is Everyday Change Podcast. I'm Patrick J. Bryan, your host, and I'm excited again to have Colin Pinkney with me. And we look forward to when we come back, he'll be on with us. All right. See you in a moment. Colin, hello, hello.
Hey, my friend, how are you doing?
Oh, good. So good to have you on. Welcome to Everyday Change Podcast. I'm glad to finally get you on. This is good.
Took some time, but we're here, and I'm excited. I appreciate you.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, man, for being on. I hope that your week's been going well, and I've been looking forward to this conversation. You and I have been connecting for so many years, and we've had so many unique dialogues and conversations. So I'm excited about having this conversation tonight to probe your brain, pick your head on some of the things that's really in your heart, but also share some things that are in your heart. But I want to bring my audience into who you are, and let's start with where your community and your leadership journey started. Let's start there. And then we'll come up to what the Harvest Center is about, and then what the Harvest Center is doing. And then we'll find ourselves somewhere in between, the importance of leadership and character and how we need to respond and what we need to do where we are right now, particularly in these United States of America as well. So let's start there. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's all right. And I've got a story that you may not know about me. I know you've known me a long time. But I when I think about where this whole journey started for me to be in a place of leadership, I think about my first job at McDonald's in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I was making a whopping $3.35 an hour. I was a budding college student at NC State University, and I got there with no scholarships, very little help from home. And I knew one thing I needed was money. So I went and got a job at McDonald's. I'll never forget it, and quickly learned that if I was going to do anything or be anything, that I was going to have to do something about it in my life. And I'll never forget the first crisis I had where I realized that I may want to follow this leading in the leadership. And that was, there was a snowstorm in Raleigh, and there was a big hill that went down in front of the restaurant. And I had borrowed my sister's car for the weekend. And it was a snowstorm. And I remember calling to the McDonald's to say, guys, I can't get there. I've never driven in snow, and it's dangerous, and I can't make it. And things were different back then, Patrick. And I remember the manager challenging me with my job that if you don't get here, you're fired. Now, for $3.35 an hour, I could have said take this job and you know what, but that job meant so much to me. And I didn't have the thought to reject his demands. And I got in my sister's car, a little green Toyota, and I did my best effort to drive. And just as I got close to the restaurant, the car hydroplaned down the ice, slid off the ice into an embankment, dented the whole side, and I'm fit to be tied.
Oh God, no, I hadn't heard this story.
my whole reference changed. And I get there. Now, at that time, I was a crew chief. So I was the highest ranking non-management person in the restaurant. And I made my mind up that this accident was my manager's fault. And I went there and I let him have it. I said, you know what? Until the president of this company shows up at this restaurant, nobody's working today. I went through the restaurant, Patrick. I unplugged all the equipment. I had keys. I locked the doors, and I told there were some other staff members. We were all college students. Right? We're making $3 an hour just trying to and taking the free hamburgers at night and the apple pies, just trying to make it. And this guy, and I had an accident. There was another person that had an accident, and I called a mutiny, and I said, everybody sit down, nobody do anything until the president, and McDonald's had a corporate office there in Raleigh. Until he shows up here, nobody works. Everybody clock out, sit down. I staged the revolt, man. And Patrick, guess what happened? About 3 hours later, the president of that region showed up in that restaurant with a bunch of $3 an hour college students who were risking their lives to go sell their hamburgers and French fries. And I didn't know it, but it was like, oh, okay, this is how it works. I can use my voice for change. I can do something.
Wow.
Persist with the demands. And they actually made a policy after that, a snow policy, that you could not threaten employees with their jobs if during inclement weather they didn't feel safe to come to the restaurant. Wow. 1984. I'll forget it. And
I did not know that story.
And then after that, every time there was a problem in the restaurant, they would threaten the managers. Well, we're going to tell Colin. and things changed. That was my first leadership.
Fight the power.
My first leadership lesson was that when things aren't right, say something. And it's the lesson I learned. Things aren't right, say something. Now, I could have said a little different. Then I was mad. I mean, and you probably never seen me upset, Patrick. I don't usually get upset, but that day I channeled my older brother Bill, who could let you have it. Mad, and Bill showed up, and the rest is history.
Wow. Yeah. No, you didn't tell me that one.
Well, and in fact, there's so much inside of that. I've had to kind of search my own soul and think, man, where did all this come from? People ask me all the time, how did you get where you are now, and how did you do it? And I usually tell a McDonald's story. And I'm not besmirching McDonald's. I think McDonald's does a lot of great things. I don't eat there anymore. I drink the coffee, but I learned so many of my lessons in leadership and management and dealing with people, because people are really the issue when we talk about change and leadership, right?
Yeah.
Really what's the opportunity? So it was from there that I just started stacking up leadership lessons and learnings and experiences that have helped me along my career that still to this day influence how I lead. I mean, I won't do a new program or effort without a written SOP. I learned that from McDonald's. Everything has
Mm-hmm.
an SOP. It has to be written. You have to teach. You don't make the assumption that people know how to ask a customer for their order, for example. You have to teach them.
Mm-hmm.
You,
Mm-hmm.
you have to understand that the average front desk, the average attendant at a McDonald's doesn't understand that if she sells one apple pie with every order, 100 orders a day, times 6 agents, you just helped this company make an extra $1 million by selling
Mm.
one apple pie with every order.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
people don't always, they don't seem to care. They don't want to know. They think that's the manager's job. I learned as a
Yeah.
person how important it was for me to have that understanding, because then it affected my behavior. I was like, wait a minute, I can get a raise if we sell more apple pies and we make profit. We're going to give me a share of the profit. McDonald's has a wonderful
Mm-hmm.
share program. Man, I
Wow.
went after them. I was selling more apple and cherry pies back in the day. um,
Wow.
but it helped catapult my career. It helped me. Oh, it helped open
Yeah.
doors for me. That longing for learning. That I think that's what I would call that. That season of my life, I had a thirst for learning. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
learn how life worked. I
Yeah.
wanted to learn how I could improve my income. I wanted to learn how I could reduce my tax burden. I, it all started at McDonald's.
Hmm. And here you are going to college, recognizing what you needed to do. It's interesting because I remember when I met you, I was in graduate school and
Yep,
cooking breakfast at the Marriott.
at the Marriott.
So
Yep,
prep cook in the mornings and before I went into class and before I went in to teach my class, because I also was a graduate teacher assistant at North Carolina A&T State University, Aggie Pride, for
mm,
grad school. And I remember those days. And it's interesting now, here we are 30 plus years later,
amen.
having a conversation about leadership, about life. And you mentioned something about your voice. And I want to hone in on something you said about that.
Yep.
On Everyday Change podcast, I start out by talking about if you want to change the direction of a thing, you change the conversation. Can you tell me a little bit about your thoughts on the importance of how do we effectively use our voice? You said something very potent in that, when you were a college student and now being the CEO of the Harvest Center, and we'll talk about what the Harvest Center is
Yep.
and what you do in that role, a little bit later. But I want to hone in on that as far as the day we're living in right now. How do we use our voice? Why should we use our voice? What's the context of using our voice now?
For me, Patrick, it starts with our ears, right?
Hmm.
Voice. It starts with how I'm hearing information, and even how I'm hearing the internal dialogue that's going on inside of me when I'm being influenced by everything that's going on around me, right? And I just learned in my own lifetime, boy, I can have some vicious dialogue in my head, and if I don't
Hmm.
quiet that noise first, if I don't regulate that noise and that voice, that inner thing that's right with trauma and neglect and abuse and rejection, man, my voice shows up, and it may not be loud, it may not be abusive, but it
Hmm.
surely won't be effective if I haven't
Hmm.
first listened to myself, right? And that's been over the course of my journey in life and career. I'd like to think I'm learning that piece of my voice better. Um, I'm currently going through something right now at the ministry where we're going through a major change. I mean, and it's literally since I've been here 13 years ago. It's like every 2 3 years, like there's a shift, right? And this year it's been more volatile than any other time, right? and and I have found myself back in that old place of giving in to the internal dialogue that's happening in me, and finding out that if I don't settle that first, I will stay frustrated and ineffective. I mean, I got to a period, Patrick, I'm just being real transparent, where I didn't feel like I could make a good decision. This was in the last 6 months. And I
Hmm.
realized where it was coming from, that voice was being stifled by the noise that I was sort of cultivating inside of me, my feelings, my sensitivities. There's a little bit of ego that every now and then likes to creep up, and I want I don't want to be seen, but I know I need to be seen. I don't want to be
Yeah.
arrogant, but I need to be present. And there's
Mm-hmm.
that dialogue. And so my voice, that what comes out of my mouth physically and contextually is informed by what I'm hearing inside of me. I really believe that hearing is
Mm.
the first pathway to owning our voice and
Wow.
really galvanizing our voice. I mean, and maybe not for everybody, right? Maybe I'm one of the
Mm-hmm.
guys
Mm-hmm.
that I'm solution oriented to a fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I believe any problem can be solved if you can just have dialogue. If you can communicate, if we can talk about it, we can solve it. Now, if we can't even talk, if we can't even get past go, because we're so in that what I call the crazy cycle, where things are so hot and toxic that we can't even talk. Well, we're surely not going to solve any problems, right?
Right.
But the communication, I think, as far as it depends on me, is to use my voice in an effective way, and that
Mm.
starts with how I'm listening to what's going on inside of my head, what's going on inside of my heart, and owning it, right, and not pushing it down and not ignoring it, but giving space for that. And there are different ways to do that. I do that, for me, I do it through prayer. I mean, I pray about texts that I send now. I pray about emails I'm sending when I'm talking to board members. I'm thinking, this is going to be a tough one. I like, Lord, would you show up in this? I've done all.
Mm-hmm.
I've checked myself on the inside. I've gone back and I edited I edited the script because I put some things in there that when I read them, I was like, nah, that's not what I want to say. That's how I'm feeling. But that's not what I want to
Mm-hmm.
communicate.
Wow, that's powerful.
And so I think,
That's mm.
yeah. So that's been showing up for me. I mean, I used to be really bad at that. I've gotten better at it, and again, I've had a dose of it here in the past 6 months as we're working on this next big move for the ministry. And there are a lot of competing interests. You know, it's definitely change. And when things change, you like to think everybody on the team, from stakeholders, board members, staff, on the same page. And all of that sits with me at the end of the day as the CEO, and I've got to make sure what I'm hearing going on inside of me doesn't infect what I say.
Mm.
I'm
That
not
that's
I'm not
incredibly that's powerful.
yeah, I'm not one of
I
those guys who believe just because you feel it you need to say it. I know there's some
right.
people who have that. I just don't. That's not me. I think
Mm-hmm.
I owe people, I owe my community, I know I owe the people I love and respect more than just saying everything I feel. I need to process that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So listening well, I think, is the first step to giving sharing my voice in an effective way.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's powerful. I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm just thinking through the mistakes I've made in speaking, not necessarily speaking before I listening, but as much as taking the time historically, as a leader
Yeah.
to ensure that I start thinking about what's going on in my inner voice, my inner world.
Yeah.
And to me, this transcends me listening. It really is about my inner voice because I can still listen to people, but my inner chatter not be where it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It drowns out what other people are saying. I'm
Yeah.
pretty good at not hearing you while you're talking. If I don't want if the voice inside of me is saying something that feels more satisfying, I'd even say, I don't hear you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. If what's going on inside of me is satisfying some urge, some self-centeredness, some ego, it's hard to hear you well.
Mm.
So I love what you said though. Pausing is I think a way to, to tame that beast and say, wait a minute, I'm not just going to say everything I'm feeling. I'm not going to. The goal is not to win the argument. The goal is to understand and be understood. And out of
Yes, it
that,
is.
voice comes through. I believe change can happen best when we, listen well internally and then give voice to that.
This is powerful. I mean, the very fact, and when you mentioned early on about your voice in your story, about going to college and your job and the lesson you learned about using your voice that produces transformation and brings change.
Yeah.
Because we're in a world right now, everything is a soundbite.
Yeah.
Everything is a video, some type of viral reel that goes out. Our conversation right now, somebody can splice a few seconds, take
Yeah.
it and try to twist it
Yeah.
and miss the meaning,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in a world that's where it is, context is king or queen, what have you.
Mhm. Mhm.
I want you to share a little bit more, unpack some more about embodying communication.
Yeah.
Um, because we are in a world where everything is about what's visual and what's out there.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little about your thoughts on that, considering just what you do and the importance of who you represent when we talk about our voice. And you said our voice is really our ears. And powerful context that you shared there. But just wanted you to kind of
Yeah.
unpack that a little bit more for us.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much of myself you want me to reveal because I can be off the chart. I give myself permission, Patrick, not to absorb the way other people do. Though
Mm-hmm.
I can. I'll give a great example. As a black man, it's easy for me to absorb any sense of injustice in the world. I can
Mm-hmm.
get there fast. I don't even have to think about it. I was just talking to my barber. We were talking about the recent murders in our city. Murders are up again in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
Young black men are being killed, and it's like, and there's this tension, and I can easily feel that. It doesn't take long for me to get there. But one of the things for me, that I think has been helpful and transforming is to be more accepting. And for me to say, instead of saying, I can't believe you did that, I can say,
Mm-hmm.
I now can say, Patrick, and I say this a lot internally, I can understand why you did that.
Mm-hmm.
That me saying I understand if you've done something or something is happening that I don't like, or that other people don't like, or that may not be the best way or the right way, I can honestly say I can understand why you did that.
Mm-hmm.
I can. I can, because I know me.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand that there are things inside of me that are still not fully regenerated, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
not permission to do dumb stuff, but there's a reality that comes with I can understand why you did that. One
Mm-hmm.
of the things, I serve as the chaplain for the Charlotte Hornets, and every year all the chaplains we get together and we gather at either the NBA All Star Weekend or we go to the Summer League. And the first thing we do, the first outreach effort we do, is we go to one of the local prisons or detention centers and we visit
Mm-hmm.
with the prisoners there. I've been doing that for the past 6 years, and I'm convinced it has changed me saying, I can't believe you did that, to saying,
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why you did that. When the guys in
Mm-hmm.
San Quentin were just there, and they're guys, I sat next to a guy who'd been in prison, Patrick. He was 73 years old. He was getting out the week after we were there. This is just during summer league. He'd been in prison since he was 17. And he began to tell me his story of what got him into prison. And his sentiment on getting out of prison was, I don't know if I can do it. I'm scared. Right. And you would think that people in prison are excited about getting out of prison. Right. I would. Right. But this guy had reoriented his whole life around living behind bars, living inside of confined spaces and rules, and not having choices. And now he's beginning to be offered this freedom, and he's starting to wrestle with, can I do it? And when you with people who are already paying the price for their wrongs, they're suffering the consequences of their voice or their misbehavior, and you do that enough, you can. I think for me, it's got me down off my high horse about being shocked and surprised when people do bad things.
Yeah.
I get why
I
people
think
do.
that's
I think that's part of the way that we can show up in conversation is sort of adopt another framing of how we see people in the midst of their struggle, their dilemma, their challenge. And that can be challenging because I know there's a strong pull that we all feel to be on one side or the other. We have this binary that is either this or that, right?
yeah. There is this false polarity
Yeah.
that is either you're on this side of the positive aspect or you're in the negative side, when polarity really is like an infinity wheel,
Wow.
because you're constantly in and out of transformation, if we're
Hmm.
honest.
Yeah.
If we're honest about where we are, we're it's not, because sometimes when we think about things that are polarizing, we think about this area and this area. Either you for
Right.
or you're against. You either
Right.
for me or you're against me. Either you're going to be all in or you're not all in.
Yeah.
And we have not taken the time at times to enter into other people's perspectives.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that we may agree with their decision making or their outcome,
Yeah.
but I'm learning now to, and what I'm hearing from you is taking this time to try to see the world from that other person's perspective, and really obtain a realistic assessment
Yeah.
of somebody's other their interest, and
Yeah.
being able to fully embrace that. As far as I may not internalize it, but I'm seeking to understand that. That's powerful.
No, I love how how you frame that. That's kind of the context for me too, right? Being able to sit in the middle of the tension without
Hmm.
without without holding allegiance to either one,
Hmm.
right? And it's unfortunate because I think we tend to, when I look back over my own life, a lot of that was inherent in how I was raised, right?
Hmm.
Um, I wasn't, I don't regret my childhood, but it wasn't the most ideal childhood, like a lot of people, particularly a lot of men who look like me who grew up in a fatherless home, where things got real binary. It was either this or that, and you there was no place, a place where the place I think where for me I began to be curious about my voice, Patrick, was as a child, as a little boy who was in a home where there was this reality that I had to live with. I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't make my
Hmm.
parents be together. They were separate. And in that space, I had a lot of questions. I had so many questions. And yet nobody ever took the time that I recall says, Colin, do you want to talk about it?
Hmm.
What do you feel? What do you think? And I don't regret my past, but boy, if I could go back, I'd say, could somebody just ask me how I feel? Can I just share how I feel? Because as a child, you didn't get to have a voice.
Oh yeah, I mean, in our culture, it was about being seen but not
You
heard in many
not
instances.
heard. You better not
Hmm.
say nothing, boy. You better not
Yeah.
touch nothing. And the sad reality is, because I know a lot of men like me, we carry that forward in our lives, in our work, and we struggle on the job because we're carrying these things, these binaries, and we don't know how to deal with tension except one way. It's either this or that. Um, if I have time, I'll tell you another powerful story about transformation, my golf story, where I really came clear on getting unstuck on this place of this or that. And
Hmm.
that has served me better than I can think of anything else in my career. And that because there are times, Patrick, I sit with donor. I have to ask people for money. You know, I don't. I don't ask people. I ask people to join their calling with our calling, and usually that means it shows up in you writing a check, and it helps us house people. But I don't. We don't all have the same views on everything.
Correct.
Just because
Hmm.
you're donating and giving doesn't mean. But there are people who think it does. There are people who think
Gotcha.
because I'm in a Christian ministry and it has a strong benevolent component that I must have a certain view politically, socially, on people, and I don't. I do, but it may not be what you think. I'll never forget
Hmm.
one board member took me out to lunch one time, which I love. That's the part of my job I love. I get to go out to eat a lot, and
Yep.
I don't have to pay for it. So if you want a job where you get free food, become a nonprofit CEO, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I remember going out with this board member, and he said, "Man, Colin, it's just so inspiring to see you do the work. You seem to understand it, and even though you've never been like that." I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute. What makes you think I've never been like this? Like the folks we serve down? I mean, really down? Well, but look at you." He said, "You." I said, "Oh yeah, I've been to some places. That ain't on my resume
Mm,
because you wouldn't hire me. You didn't ask me that when you hired
right.
me. You didn't ask me all the ugly places I've been and all the, but you asked me my skill set and my passion,
Yeah.
and a lot of it comes out of those places. But again, I don't, we don't always have to have the same idea to go in the same direction. I used to think we did. I used to think that the only way you can go in the same direction with people, you have the same idea.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
found out by being married that ain't even the case, right? It's like,
No, that's right. I know
yeah,
that's right.
and
And
I know a lot of
yeah,
people that's wrecked their relationship because I held to some of those idealistic thoughts that you have to. mm, I'm
yeah,
a
I have too.
Yeah,
A
have a
lot of that was just, one of the things that I learned as I grew, Colin, as well, is I don't have to have the same mind as you, but I need to mind the same things.
ooh, that's good. I gotta
So
write that down.
I may not have the same mind. No, but I do need to mind the same things. I need to be mindful of who I am and how I respond and how I react. I need to be mindful of how I treat you and how I interact.
Yeah.
Become more aware of your world, more aware. Last year, when I was in Amsterdam, I was at a lecture in
Mm,
my doctoral program. On one of the lectures with one of the international scholars in organization development, introduces this concept about resolving dilemmas, and how we spend the majority of our lives resolving dilemmas. And he talked about a construct of, we say it's either this or that. That's the
mm,
first phase.
right, right.
Either or. Either you're going to flow this way, or this is how it's going to be. And we do that in negotiations a lot. We do that
Yeah,
in
yeah.
how we present proposals, how we try to drive initiatives. Then we move from either or to both and. I say,
Hmm.
okay. So
Yeah,
we have your idea, my idea, our idea. So it's both and.
yeah.
Then he went through a concept called through and through. And I said, okay. He and we were doing exercise. I ended up having to present the exercise on the spot. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. And so it was funny because everybody laughed at me and I laughed at myself. But it was something that you had to walk into a situation not knowing what the cues would be.
yeah.
And what it was showing me was sometimes we stay in either or, both and he said it's now time for us to move through and through. We
Man,
need to
that's
move through tension, through conflict, through different perspectives to
whew.
to continue to evolve. And that stayed with me. And that was last year. And I was like, oh wow. So the fact that we're talking about the importance of the inner chatter is incredibly powerful, and I'm so glad that you
Yeah,
mentioned that, because that made me think about how polarizing we are right now. And many times, if I do not hear anyone and I cannot hear you and refuse to hear you, then perhaps I'm also refusing potential solutions. Just an
well,
idea, but I thought I'd share that.
yeah, yeah. Well, and sometimes the solution is just something as simple as just keep moving forward, right?
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
it's stifling, right, to hold on to those mindsets. It has been for me, and I found what's been relieving is to stop holding that like that, right? To
Yeah.
just that, and even though I'm very solution oriented, I've found great satisfaction in just keep moving forward. Just keep getting up every day, right? Just keep
Mm.
brushing your teeth every day. I mean, just the rote realities of things that we can do, I think, can give way to the things we know to do can give way to things that we can do, but we didn't know that we could do. Like
Mm.
I didn't know I could be patient with that. I thought it had to happen now, and if it didn't happen now, then the world's going to fall off a cliff, and I'm going to. It's not, and and we don't, sometimes we shortchange known realities that live inside of us that, man, I might could do this. I mean, it could be possible. I think it gives way to possibility
Yeah.
thinking rather than hopeless, pessimistic thinking, which I think our world is so full of right now. I mean, I think the discourse right now, I see a high level. I don't know what you see, Patrick, but the world I'm trying to move in and continue to lead in, even with my own team, and I've got this weird reality where I've got to lead up and I've got to lead down. I got a board of directors, community stakeholders, and I've got a staff and volunteers, and then I got other people on the side who just cheer me on, or people who challenge what I do. It's a whole circle, but um, I lost my thought. But either way, I'm just
No, you're
realizing
good.
that in this world, it's okay to not have to be fully where you're going yet, right?
Mm.
Okay, not to be fully there yet, and that is
Yeah.
sort of the solution. That's part of the process. Is just moving, keep moving things forward,
Hmm.
right? And get to maybe not the end, but to a better place, maybe further down the road, right? I think one of the ways I think about it often is every time I go to the gym. Um, Patrick, I've had some heart issues in my lifetime that have really been
Hmm. Yep.
more epiphanies than anything else, right?
Hmm.
Living with heart disease and being under the care of cardiologists and cardiothoracic surgeons and people who I didn't know existed. Um, and every time I go to the gym, I practice this thing that I believe that affects how I lead, and that is invariably, if I'm going to do 3 miles on the treadmill, the hardest phase is going to be after about the first half mile, getting to the next mile and a half. That's
Mm.
so hard. Because
Hmm.
I'm not a runner. I don't run marathons. I'm just trying to run to keep my heart rate up and all that good stuff and feel like I'm living well and get the energy that comes from good exercise so I can get up the next morning and keep going at the age that I'm at now. But what I've learned to practice is the inner dialogue is, for me, is not that you need to stop, just take another step. Take your
Hmm.
eyes, take your eyes off the screen and just look ahead and take the next step. And then there's this magical thing that happens for people who run, who know this, and I've experienced it, where you hit stride, you hit your stride, and it feels effortless. My breathing is effortless. The burning in my legs is gone, and it feels like I could literally jump that building up there behind me. Right? I can't. How do I do it? There it
Hmm.
is. You feel empowered. I mean, it's the most amazing feeling that. And I could have stopped, and
Yeah.
I could have listened to parts of my body, parts of my being that says, this really hurts, Colin. Your calves are tightening up, and maybe I adjust a little bit. I adjust my running. I'm landing more on one side than the other. I make adjustments, and I've learned to do that rather than in the beginning when I first started. This is too hard. I can't do this, and I could use the excuse. I've got heart disease, and I got to be careful. I can't if I feel chest pain. I mean, I had all that, and then I just kind of reoriented the reality that I can do this. I can do this, and
Mm.
that's
And
the goal,
I know so well.
and that goes to that through and
Yeah.
through. I think that's for me. That's through and through, right?
Hmm.
It's a very physical,
Mm.
tangible reality, but keep moving forward. That's the key.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Keep advancing.
yeah.
Wow, this is powerful. I'm enjoying the organic nature of what you're sharing. Thank you for that. I
You're
am
welcome.
in my leadership infrastructure. One of the things that I am dealing with really is helping in the area of tenacity, having a real Christ centered view of resilience, and the importance of having resilient organizations and having resilient leaders that understand bounce back capacity, and resilient leaders that understand the importance of helping people have develop that type of character as well. And I think what that does is help us with empathy. It helps us with sympathy. It helps us
Mm,
become more flexible and pliable as leaders.
yeah.
Um, and one of the things that I'm also learning, Colin, is to end my inner chatter with the word and.
Yeah.
And here's what I mean.
Yeah.
Um, even last year, this time last year was my heart attack. This time last year. It's been a
Welcome to the
year.
club. Yeah. Wow.
And unexpected, unplanned, shocker. My whole mindset was, how did I get here? What did I do? What did I do wrong? I thought I
Lame.
was taking care of myself.
Game. Oh,
Just all these different things that was going on in my mind. And one of the things that I began to work on, Colin, was um it's kind of like the in improv. In improv, one of the things that you learn in improv, when I used to do acting, you had to use the word and. Something would happen
yeah. Keep
and
it going.
so yeah. And
Yeah.
so that's what I do with my thoughts now. When there's an inner critic or inner dialogue that comes, I add and,
And yeah.
because what that does is that helps me move through versus being concrete.
Yeah.
And so I started learning, deliberately started doing that. And I remember you and I had a conversation about it. I was out at an
Yeah.
antique store. I called you about what I was feeling regarding what was going on with me, and
Yeah.
it might have been around my birthday or something. I know I was out at one of
Yeah.
my antique places. We were talking about that, and that's one of the things that I began to consider was, when we deal with inner dialogue, rather than being concrete and stopping the conversation or the chatter, we merge with the chatter and we say and so what that does, it gives you a chance to shift the thinking.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can name what you're thinking, and that helps you connect yourself to others. It helps you connect to what you're experiencing in terms of your inner chatter, so that you can effectively bring an environment of resiliency to others, because people are looking to be resilient as well, especially in the world where we're experiencing right now revolutionary change instead of comprehensive change or incremental change. It's hindering us from being able to continue moving forward. And if
Yeah.
we do, people are struggling with their fears and their anxieties as a result of it. So I
Yeah.
want to just offer that to the conversation about adding that piece, instead of being either or, both and, work on through and through. And
Yeah.
how do we effectively help our organizations, our clients, our team members work through and through versus having this polarized tension?
Well, brother, you've helped me just with that. And that's one thing I love and appreciate about you. There's never an interaction where I don't leave um, feel
Oh, thank you, brother.
having evolved in my own thinking and being pushed and not challenged, just pushed forward, right?
Mhm.
Just push forward. I love that about you. I love that about your effort and all the things you do. And no matter where, even the times we lost connection and we both been through some challenges, there was never this quit. This quit thing just doesn't exist with you. And I love that
No, it
about
doesn't.
I love that about
No, it
you.
doesn't.
Yeah, I mean,
I
quit,
remember those
quit,
days, man.
maybe
Oh,
might, yeah, pivot. Ain't no quit, right?
right. Not at all.
I
Well, you
love
were
it.
there, and you get the journey. And a lot of those times, even I remember those days. It was really shame that was causing me to hide from friendships,
Yeah,
not wanting to man, I got to share with you what I'm struggling with, and I'll think what was happening in my life at that time, and not wanting to be, disclosure. But in my disclosure, that led to a place of wholeness.
yeah,
And you were there, and others that were my close relationships that challenged me in my thinking, challenged me in my actions at the time, to help me move forward. And here we are, years later, still having conversation about how we can continue to grow in our character, in our communication.
yeah,
And I'm thinking about the last time we were out celebrating your birthday,
yeah,
uh we were talking about the campaign and what you're doing there with the Harvest Center.
Yeah.
Share me a little bit about what that's about. Um, because that was around the time this idea about a blackout, economic blackout, came from others,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and I think that this is a time that we can. And again, you were sharing those sentiments about us giving philanthropically and the
Yeah.
importance of investing. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit talk a little bit about the Harvest Center for those that may not know, and then talk a little bit about what you're doing, what's next? Because I was there when you first, um, you took me out to the land. We walked
Mhm.
around and prayed, and
Yeah.
I just you shared your vision with me. So open up about that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for letting me share that, Patrick. And that work continues, man. It's amazing. But I always start by saying, man, I'm just in the passenger seat.
Mm-hmm.
I really am. I mean, I have these things that I believe God presents, and it's like, okay, God, is that even possible? Right? Is that do I even have the ability to galvanize this work? I mean, I had a meeting, Patrick, yesterday with architects and civil engineers, and I know a little bit to be dangerous, but thank God I'm not doing this by myself because there's stuff I
Yeah.
don't know, and I'm good with that. Because, but anyway, all that to say, the reason we're doing that is because our the big why for us at the Harvest Center is create a safe place for people in crisis, right?
Okay.
People need
Okay.
safety first, and not just physical safety, but felt, emotional, social safety. All right, and so we what we're blessed to do is find people, men, women, families with children who are in the midst of a crisis. That the commonality is that if they don't find a way through it and over it, they're going to end up homeless, living in the streets, and far worse than their current situation is. So we've been doing that for the past 7 years here at the airport campus. We've got a full campus with apartments and gymnasium and assets and cafeteria. It's literally it's a safe community where people who are in crisis can find sort of a great a place to dock for a while, right? Like a boat in the middle of a storm, it can go to a place and anchor down and get retooled and refueled. And our vision is that we will see people find harbor with us and then move from this place to live up their full God-given potential. And that's homeowners working careers instead of just jobs, kids who are thriving in school. I mean, one of my favorite stats to quote is that the children who live with us are considered homeless because they qualify for the McKinney-Vento funding that comes from the federal government. And our kids academically compared to other kids in public schools are outperforming them by 3 to 1. I mean, 70% of
Wow.
our kids are performing at the highest grade level for whatever grade, and we have 100% on time graduation for kids who are otherwise homeless. But
Mm.
because they're at the Harvest Center, they have a home, right?
Okay.
For
Mm.
18 months, we house them, we wrap full, holistic, Christ centered services around them. One of the craziest questions I get, Patrick, and let me just vent a little bit. And I don't know who's
Please.
listening to this. I don't know how far this is going, but you know, I make no apologies that we are a Christ-centered agency. That most, if not all, of what we do is informed by biblical principles, and that's the way we show empathy and care to the world around us. We surely don't use it as a dividing thing to say, well, if you're not Christian, you can't come here. And I just got to say, the craziest thing in the world for people to believe about Christians is that because we're Christians, we won't be friendly, kind, generous to people who aren't. Right? It's just crazy. And that that sort of mantle has been set over this generation of Christians, and I believe it's one that grieves God's heart. I think
Mm-hmm.
it puts to shame the message of Christ that we would be known as people who distinguish others and their worth to be served, helped, lifted, empowered because they haven't confessed Christ. I do that. I answer that question so many times. Well, do you guys let people who aren't Christian in your program? And I,
Really?
I don't curse. I'm like, heck yeah, we do. What are you talking about? Do
Mm.
we? Yeah.
Mm.
Who would what would it look like if Christ said no to the people who weren't Christian? If he didn't have even a dialogue with you, a decent, and I'm not talking about banter and judgment and all that. I'm talking about just a discourse, a valuing conversation like he did with the woman at the well.
Yeah.
I mean, and yet I get that question all the time. And guess who asked me the question? It ain't the unbelievers. And I get this close to using words I don't use. Like, what are you talking about? How would
Yeah.
we serve people who don't know Christ? Especially those people. That's who ought to get all of our love and our compassion and our care and our generosity. And that's one of the so when when we were having my birthday party and you blessed me by being there and honored me that day, the discussion was, guys, listen, I know we're talking about an agenda. And again, it's easy to put on my black hat, bro. I got enough blackness around me, trust me.
Right.
And in that moment, there was this swell, and it's still going on. Well, we ought to mobilize, galvanize, get together, and we ought to control our spending and not give it to them. I was like, well, then, okay, who are you going to give it to then? Because it's still a tool. It's still a resource that you have. And just because the world's going crazy right now doesn't change God's heart for us as believers to be generous with the things we have. And I challenged the brothers that day with a challenge, say, okay, guys, if you're gonna boycott certain systems and structures in our community, then let me tell you a good place where you can invest that. And this is when I put on my CEO hat. And I say things like, did you know that 76% of the people we serve are single black women with children? 94% of the people who are in this situation in crisis who are looking for safe harbor look like me and you. They could be our brothers and our sisters, and they need our help.
Yeah.
And they don't just need you freezing your spending at these big box stores and these online platforms. They need you to be generous in spaces where you can empower. And it doesn't just have to be the Harvest Center. Find out who is serving the people who look like me and you, and say to them, man, we realize we've been giving you guys pennies and crumbs and we've been dumping billions in there. It's like, that's why we haven't solved this problem. I mean, that's what when they told me the amount of money that we spend at one of those stores with the circle and the dot in the middle, I was like, you give me a percent of that and I will end homelessness in Charlotte. I know how to do it. God has gifted us with that. But instead,
that is you. Mm-hmm.
Instead, we get crumbles, we get measures, and I'm like, why? Maybe this is a good call for us to be generous. I mean, if we're going to constrict our spending there, what would it look like for us to show up as generous in another space? A space of change and transformation and safe harbor and progress, and not a handout. I'm talking about a hand up. I'm talking about empowering people to rise above crisis and not just giving somebody a loaf of bread, but teaching them how to live up to their full potential in Christ. And so, you guys blessed me that day to hear me put on my CEO hat at my birthday party.
But well, again, that's your.
Yeah, and so we're envisioning, Patrick, right now. This is where I say I'm really in the passenger seat. So when we acquired this property that we currently have to create this safe harbor for families, we call it the Passport Program. We didn't have to pay a dime for 7.5 acres and 90,000 square feet of facilities and 22 bedroom apartments, and just it's amazing what happened. And then barely 4 years later, when the Charlotte Douglas Airport let us know that they needed to acquire our property because they're growing, because economically our city's thriving. I don't know if you guys heard, but Charlotte is now the 6th busiest airport in the world. Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah, I read that.
We are the 6th busiest airport in the world. Let that sink in. And I've been to some big airports, and it blows my mind that airport's literally in my backyard. But because of that, we've been displaced, and we had to go find a new home. and I started
Mm-hmm.
doing my thing, and God started doing His thing. I get a call from a friend of mine, who told a guy to call me. So I want you to help Colin. And so next Friday, Patrick, I'll receive the keys, fully donated, 9.5 acres, 89 apartments. We're
Come
talking about
on, bro.
growth, and not just apartments, but fully furnished. In the
Yes, yes,
historic African American community in the city of Charlotte, and we are being entrusted to take that and create safe harbor again, to help more of our family and our friends, not just survive but thrive. Because
yes.
yeah, that's what it's all about: helping our friends and neighbors um, thrive. We've given back $9 million in value in the past 6 years by helping people not just be fed but be transformed. They're no longer getting public assistance. They don't stand in soup kitchen lines. They don't go back to shelters. They're not doubled up. We visited one of our graduates just yesterday. Beautiful new apartment. Her three sons.
Mm,
A
mm,
year
mm.
ago, couldn't have dreamed it. A year ago, she couldn't have dreamed it. But I remember when she moved in, I gave her a bird cage. I said, "Here's what God's telling me. He wants you to trust Him like the birds do." I said,
Come on,
"That's it."
sir.
And she just cried. She says, "I've been praying about that." And yesterday, we walked in her apartment. And again, guys, I'm not talking about giving people food on the side of the street. I'm talking about a life change where,
Mm-hmm.
where,
Mm-hmm.
where, where generationally, these kids will not have to suffer through the poverty that they have experienced as children. They have an opportunity now to thrive. And that's what our ministry is about. It's about people thriving and not surviving.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's the Harvest Center. And we're doing some big stuff, man.
Yes, you
God's
are.
God's doing it. I'm telling you, because I'm sitting in the passenger seat looking out the window, like, what in the world, God? What in the world?
Yeah,
So,
I'm going to start saying that more often. I'm in the passenger seat.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And I'm so appreciative of what you're sharing. When we were all together for your birthday, just a group of men really, really digging into the importance of talking about these issues. And I thought about that. Going from a blackout to a give out,
there you go.
and you know, going from a blackout where, okay, I'm going to just stop shopping, I'm going to stop giving, I'm going to start doing it. Well, what about generating, distributing, dispensing, you know, distributing, dispensing,
Yeah,
being generous,
yeah,
offering what I have
yeah.
to support an organization such as yours.
Amen.
And as a person who's been in pastoral ministry myself, the way that people give a lot of their resources into our local churches. Um, and I want to challenge us to think about, how do we think philanthropically? How do we think in terms of what we give to organizations that are well led, well administrated, that have clarity of vision, clarity of focus, and we're able to provide a partnership. So I challenge those of you that are even in your blackout mindset to shift it to a give out perspective as well. Where can
That's
you reroute the blackout mentality to a give out mentality? Not just about consuming, but about producing as well, and investing within your community. So that's my challenge to my
wow.
audience, to think about that at a larger scale, because this is really about serving. This is about leading. This is about helping others come into the space of, you know, I call it, if I can use a metaphor, um, like a centrifuge. Years ago, I was in seventh grade. Might have been my father, when he was in the Air Force, was a director of laboratory services. And Colin, that whole summer I was a volunteer. Seventh grade, might have been seventh grade. No, I'm sorry. eighth or ninth grade, one of those times when I volunteered and was learning some skill sets concerning what they did in the lab.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched him use the centrifuge and other lab techs. And I think about how sometimes we have either centripetal leadership or centrifugal systems,
Mm.
and how power, when we're centripetal, the power comes inward. It's
Wow.
about the center. Whereas when we're centrifugal, it's pushing it outward. So it's distributing things across versus pulling things within.
Wow.
And I think what you're talking about, and if I could just use, and I like the power of a metaphor, is perhaps this centrifugal leadership, because when it was spinning, the culture within the centrifuge, what was inside was going out versus what's on the
Wow.
outside pulling in.
Man.
So it redistributes the emphasis off of power and it moves it into production. How can we all reinvest in each other?
Wow.
Which everybody sees their ingenuity or their inner genius. Everybody sees their ingenuity, and that is how we can thrive as a community, is moving perhaps this centripetal force. We know what that is. It sucks the power in, it moves it in. But when we're centrifugal, perhaps, and I'm just thinking about when I worked with my dad, how I
Man.
was just amazed at that. Like, okay, this is interesting. Why would it do that? And yet it's a metaphor
That's powerful.
for how we share our stories with one another,
Yeah.
how we share our lives with one another, how we share our transparencies, perhaps, or authenticities with one another, our narratives with one another, so that we can see others thrive as well. And that's the work that you're doing that I find incredibly powerful. So I honor you for that, man. It really blesses me to see, where it was to where it is now to where it's going to, where it's what's taking place. So congratulations on getting the keys, man. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
powerful.
Well, one thing I've learned, and we take time to celebrate when God does those things. But what I know also then is that God's retooling us, right? That there's
Mm,
that won't be sameness is gone. That you talk about change, we get the keys, here comes change. Right? What we've been
hmm
doing, I love your wording there, these centri I can't even say it, but I know what you mean because I took engineering in college. And and the fact that when we experience that pull outward, then when there's change, right? And for the staff, one of the things I always very transparent with my staff, I say it a lot. I say, guys, things are about to change. I said, and oftentimes I ask some questions like, what have you ever been inside of an organization that was changing as much as ours? And and
mm,
and people say no because the old model, Patrick. Think about this. So I'll go back to my McDonald's. The old model for branding was don't change. Think about it. The old marketing branding standard was make your staff be consistent, don't change it. And think about
yeah.
now how fast we see change, how fast we see. I remember at McDonald's, they taught us so good that we would stand down little old ladies who said, I'd like to have ketchup on my Big Mac. We'd say, ma'am, I'm sorry, I can't do that. What do you mean you can't do that? You got ketchup. Yeah. You got Big Mac. Yeah. But the rule is a Big Mac is 2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onion on the sesame seed bun. It don't say nothing about ketchup. I'm sorry. And I got a hamburger thrown at the back of my head one time, repeating that. But then, but
Right.
then it felt valuing because it was like we could stand on. We're McDonald's.
Yeah.
We don't change, man. And then
Uh,
Burger King came back, and what did they say? Have it your
yeah.
way.
Have it your way. Yeah, they
And
sure did.
they took 14% market share from McDonald's with that commercial. Have it your now 14% market share don't sound like a lot. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars because
Yeah.
they changed they spoke the language of change. And McDonald's
Wow.
sat with us for too long, but now they're different. But now they're playing
Mhm.
catch up, right?
Yeah.
No pun intended with catch up there, but change is it's part of the world we live in. And I think
Yeah.
we used to be taught not to change. I think what you just described there is, man, the power of change that will come
Yeah.
when we invert the model for leadership.
Hmm.
It's gonna
Yeah. And I
come,
think,
and
yeah, it's important that we move away from either or and both and we got to go through and through. We have to
I
go
love that.
through these tense places, through the dark places, through the low places, the light places, the high places. That will help us continue. We have
Yes.
reasons to continue. We have an impetus to continue to be who we are, and the importance of being able to really share our stories with one another. Um,
Yeah.
as we move into this space of not just being blackout folks, we got to be give out people. And so I'm
Man,
so glad that you shared that.
I'm glad you gave me the framing for that, because I trust me, I'm gonna share that more now. You crystallize that. Well, just blackout, man, give out, man, that's powerful.
We
Yeah,
do. We got to be dispensers
yeah,
and dispensers with generosity, and that's what a place like the Harvest Center does. And I think it's important for us to be able to give into that of our time and our resources, partnering in that way.
can I
This
share
is
a
good.
testimony with that, Patrick? So
Please, by all means, bro,
last
go
night
ahead.
it was 10:45. I'm still up doing some work. The change is happening, and I get a
Hmm.
call from one of the gentlemen who married a lady who graduated from our program 4 years ago. And, and,
Mm,
and this lady came in our program broken, three boys, life's a mess. She's hopeless. She feels hopeless. I mean, she was scared even to trust us, and we were providing her this safe harbor. And to watch them grow and to flourish. I mean, they're not just growing, they're flourishing. He called me last night. He said, Colin, I need your help. He says, I need to see our giving record to the Harvest Center. He says, because we've been giving there for 3 years now. Now, this is a family who 5 years ago did that. One, they didn't know each other. Two,
hmm.
the mom was fit to be tied. She was being thrown out of a hotel. She had no money left. She was running from a DV situation. I mean, her world was lost, and she had very little faith in the church too. That was part of her story. And now to see her not just married but thriving, her three boys doing well. And then her husband called me last night and said, Colin, would you do me a favor? I'm finishing up my taxes. He says, we got an extension. He says, I just need to see our record of giving, because we've been giving every month for the past 3 years. And I thought, are you kidding me?
Wow.
This,
Wow.
if anybody would get a pass in my book, would be this couple. But yet they understood the power of transformation, and not just surviving, but thriving. And man, I could tell he was so proud to have to send to his tax accountant a giving report where he had been giving now to a nonprofit. And he was so proud. And I was
Mm,
proud with him. I said, man, I'm
mm.
so proud of you guys. I said, if you ever need me, he said, I'm sorry to call you late at night, but we got to get this to the accountant. I said, man, you call me anytime with this kind of problem, because that's a good problem to have.
That
So,
is
but that's the
incredible,
problem.
and I think we need to have more.
Go ahead.
We need to have more of those conversations like this that talks about that we talk where we discuss what it is to give, what it is to be philanthropic, what it is to have this mindset of partnership. um I know that right now in our world, we're dealing with what I like to call the normalization of the abnormal.
Mm-hmm.
So that there's a ratcheting up of anxiety, there's a increase of chaos, an increase of disorder. I even did a lecture a couple of years ago on leading in chaos.
Mm.
Did an online course concerning that, and I want to get your thoughts. As we come to the close of our podcast this evening, how should we respond with this perspective of normalization of the abnormal, or as there is an increase of anxiety and chaos and disorder, how do you stay where you are in this place of calm, this place of peace, this pace of continual growth? I want to hear your thoughts on that. And also want to ask everyone, and thanks again for everybody tuning in to Everyday Change Podcast. This has been a great conversation, Rich. Please get the likes up, everybody. Let's get the likes up. Let's get the shares up. I want to make sure more people see this podcast. If you have any questions, please go ahead and put those in the comments. Any questions that you have of Colin and myself, please share with us. Colin, go ahead and lean in on that if you can. Weigh in.
Yeah, well, that's a loaded. I mean, that question is so full in so many ways I could go with that. And again, I think part of it goes back to this self dialogue we're having, um, and it goes deeper to the sense that if we don't stay fluid in our dialogue, fluid in our discussions with others, uh, but first with ourselves, right? What am I believing about now? One of the things that I'm good at because of my early childhood trauma of abandonment and rejection, I'm good at skepticism, right?
Mm.
I'm not the first to believe just because somebody said that makes it true or
Yeah.
believable or right or something I should second, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially when there's a cultural narrative that could say, you know, um, but I think we have to stay fluid, right? We I think and it's easier said than
Through and through.
done.
Mm-hmm.
Through and through, right? It's through and through. It's because as soon as we get, I think of fluidity, I think of staying hydrated. I've learned with heart disease that it's important to stay hydrated, but not overhydrated, right? So staying fluid with our feelings, our thoughts, our perceptions, being okay with saying instead of I can't believe they did that, I can say I can see why they did it. And I don't have to
Mm.
have a dog in that fight. I can
Uh-huh.
see it. I can see
Yeah.
why right now some of the things we're saying that look to be unjust or whatever, I can say I can see it. I know human behavior. I know it well. And that doesn't give him a pass. And that doesn't put me
Right.
on that side. But it
Right.
does keep me fluid. It keeps me from digging my heels in on this or that and I know, and I guess I have the advantage, Patrick, and you've got it too now because we're heart brothers now. That stress is a killer. I
Yes,
mean,
it
stress
is.
is a killer. I mean, when I had my
Yeah.
first heart attack, I laid on my back in my cardiologist's cold slab while he ran a thing up my chest and placed a stent in my heart, and I watched him do the whole thing. I'm totally awake. And this man's saving my life. And he's having a conversation with me, and he says, "What do you do for a living, Mr. Pinkney?" I said, "Well, I'm a district manager, and I'm running these." He says, "First thing you do when you get out of my hospital, because I don't want to see you back here, you need to change your job because it's killing you. The stress of that job is killing you. You either change that job or change how
Mm.
you, but it's killing you, right?" And the stress was, and when he said that, and I was like, I understood it then. I understood why I felt so tired all the time. I understood then why that was stress. That was stress. And now that I know I'm aware of what those symptoms are, I move away from stress. You want me to fight
Mm.
you? Or he shouldn't have done that, and he can't do that. I'm trying to live long and prosper. I can be fluid with that and
Yeah.
say, I can see why he did it. And just because I say it doesn't mean I'm on his side or their side. I gotta stay fluid. Stress is gonna kill me. It's gonna kill us. It's
No,
gonna
but
immobilize
yeah.
us in a way that we're not functional. I think we become less faithful when we're in stress. I know that. I know my unfaithfulness in my life when I wasn't processing the things that were stressing me. And it's the sure path to unfaithfulness in our lives. It's
Mm.
stress
Mm.
not just a killer, but it will lead us down a path of being unfaithful to the things that we say we hold dear and true. And rather than say, I can't believe they did it, I see why they did it. I don't condone it, but I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
That has saved me heart palpitations, bro. That has
Mm-hmm.
saved me. I mean, I can, but when I'm stressing, I can feel it in my body. I don't know if you have that
Mm-hmm.
experience,
Yep.
but I don't have headaches. I don't have heart palpitations because I have decided for me, especially in this time that the world's in, and I think just practically, I mean, I think we do ourselves a favor to stop feeding ourselves so much of that.
Yeah.
Because so much of it doesn't even matter, right?
Correct.
At least for me, it doesn't. It's like,
Yeah.
here's like, for example, I've got I got two wonderful neighbors live on the side of me, and one of the things I could never get to grow in my yard, Patrick, was just good grass.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do all this hard work all year long, and I do the seed and the fertilizer and all that, but invariably my neighbor next to me wasn't doing it. So when he cut his grass, his clippings of weeds they got in my yard, and the same
Yeah.
other, right? and so and so I'll never forget one time I had a guy come aerate my yard, and that if folks know what that means, they come poke holes in the grass, let it breathe,
Yeah.
on the fertilizer seed. And I love green grass, man. I grew up with red clay dirt in my mother's yard, and it was traumatizing that we had the only house on the street there was no grass. I
Wow.
mean, it was traumatizing because why can't we grow grass? And I hired a guy one time, and he said, I told him what the problem was. He said, well, it's your neighbors. He said, but here's what you can do. He said, when I aerate, I'm just going to aerate a little bit of their yard too. It won't hurt their grass. It'll help it. He says, and it'll take down some of theirs. And you do it on both sides. And I wish you could see my yard now, man. I'm so proud of my yard. it's like carpet. You could sleep on it. But it's because I concern myself just a little bit more with my neighbor's condition, right?
Wow. Come
And
on.
I didn't just worry about
Good
my
perspective.
stuff. I concerned myself a little bit more with their condition, the condition of the grass, because it was affecting me anyway. It was affecting my yard.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like we're all out there. And I never said to them, you need to get your weeds out of my grass or you need to fix. I just I blow their leaves a little extra. I make sure that stuff doesn't sit, and I'm just cultivating what's around me. I'm just letting that flow outwardly, you know.
Mm.
And it's
Fluid.
fluid, bro. Stay fluid.
Fluid. Wow.
Stay fluid. Galatians. This is my last word. Galatians 6:10. It informs most of what I do. Therefore, brothers, as we have opportunity, let us do good unto all men. And then
Yeah.
they add peace, especially the household of faith.
Especially the household of faith. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there's that promise we get: be not weary in doing well, for in due season you will reap if you don't faint. That's fluid for me, man.
Yeah. It is.
Keep doing good.
Wow.
Keep
Come,
love.
come
Keep
on,
loving.
audience.
Keep
Everyday
loving.
change audience. Everybody put in the comments fluid.
Yeah, yeah.
Fluid.
Stay fluid.
Fluid. Cultivate everything around you. Fluid. Some incredible
Yeah, yeah.
perspective that you shared with us. Thank you so much. Does anybody have a
Sure.
question for Colin? A question for me that you want to just ask that we perhaps can address? Let's go ahead and put fluid in the comments. Let's get the likes up. If you haven't had a chance to like the channel, please go ahead and like the channel. If this is your first time, welcome to Everyday Change Podcast. My guest today is Colin Pinkney, my great friend, also CEO of the Harvest Center. Anybody else have any questions, please share your questions with us. Let's get the likes up and also share this link with others and make sure that you subscribe. Absolutely. Doing good. Doing good. The household of faith, fluid.
Amen.
Yes. Yes.
6:10.
Yes. All right. Well, this has been incredible, man. Colin, thank you for being on. I enjoy having these conversations. I really want to continue to grow the dialogue that I'm having with others. And so I was reflecting on the conversations we had back during COVID on GPS, Grief, Pain, and Stress with all the
Oh
brothers
yeah,
at one time.
that was good too, bro.
And that was a rich dialogue. And that was right before my doctoral program. And here I am a few years later writing on that now and researching it deeply.
Wow.
And looking forward to more conversations that we can have. So again, thank you for being on tonight, man. Any last words you want to share with the audience?
You're welcome, and I just want to say thank you back to you, man. You are continually influencing me and all that I do, and I mean that sincerely. Just watching you flourish in your gift and your calling, your intention, it's inspiring. It keeps an old guy like me moving forward. It's energizing, right? And I like good company. I don't like a lot of company, but I like good company.
I hear
And
you. Same here, man.
you are good company, bro.
So are
Yeah,
you, bro. Man, thank you so much, man. Love you much. I appreciate you being on tonight. Want to
always.
thank all the Everyday Change audience. Be with us soon. We'll be having some more podcasts here within the next month or two. And again, if you want to change the direction of a thing, change the conversation. We'll see you
Yeah.
next time. Thanks so much, Colin. Appreciate everybody being on. See you
Be
soon.
well, my brother. God bless.
Okay, now. Bye bye.